The Pacers schedule is out, and it's very interesting. Some interesting tough pockets, very easy close. The Paris games jack it all up, and we're going to tell you why it's going to influence their record on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Monday. Hope you had a great week, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers and forget the word weekend. And today, we're diving into the schedule. It came out last Thursday. I was on a trip, didn't have time to get into it, but finally, we're here for my favorite show on this podcast every year, where Adam Friedman and I dive into the schedule game by game, which sounds exhausting, but it's really worth it. This is where you see where the back-to-backs are, where the tough stretches are, where the Pacers can gain ground against opponents that may not be as easy in some cases, or lose ground on a back-to-back that seems cushier, right? And this year specifically, there's a lot of easier and harder stretches in the Pacers schedule that I think will influence their final record. They have the Paris games, which will explain why that's going to matter. And we both landed on a number of wins for the Pacers, slightly over their over-under. Adam smoked me in this contest last year. In fact, he's won more often than me in this. But this is our 8th year doing it, and I'm going to get him back this year. Let's go. Let's break down the Pacers schedule and why it's so unique. It's my favorite show of the year and the one that makes me look the stupidest every year. It's the schedule preview, finding the hard parts, analyzing the easy parts, and, of course, figuring out if the projections about how good the Pacers will be is right or wrong. Last year, both me and the person I've done this with for 8 years now predicted the Pacers would be better than the over-under suggested because of their schedule, and we were right, although we weren't right enough. And this year, we're going to get even closer to right. It's Adam Friedman. You've heard him here all the time. Adam, you smoked me in the schedule predictions last year. It wasn't even close. 52-41. I'd consider like 45-50 to be a good score because you can see what teams are good and what's not. 52 is very good, and 41 is very bad. It was not even close.
I wish my gambling was as good as that score was, but it would indicate. What is their over-under this year? Last year, I want to say it was 38.5. That sound right?
Last year, the one that I typed down was 37.5. This year, I've seen it either as 46.5 or 47.5. Okay, I think this year's is a little closer than I thought last year's was.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest difference usually is I'm a little bit more optimistic about the team, which has been helpful in 4 of the 7 years we've done so far, right? I think 18, 19, they were better than we thought they were going to be. They were not as good in 2021, but they were this last year and even the year before. But I think the big thing, right, is mainly you have to think about how many games you think they'll win, and that sort of helps you figure out the schedule, right? You sort of back your way into a number.
That is true. The trouble I end up having is I end up indexing on like too much on like, oh, this is a hard stretch. Like it's going to be hard for them to get through this very well. And it's weird. And the problem last year specifically.
Yeah.
The problem with last year specifically is they would beat all these good teams and lose to all these bad teams. So even if you got the win total pretty close to right, the specific games were all over the place. It was so hard to nail it down.
Did you have them beating Milwaukee? Well, I guess we didn't have the extra game because of the plan, but they beat Milwaukee 5 times last year, right?
Yeah. I don't think
I'm not sure had any of those.
No, we did the thing where, yes, okay, the first 3 Milwaukee games, we both had them losing all 3. That was a big change in the one.
I might have given them 1. But yeah, I mean, part of it too is they started off the season like looking like they were a top 4 team. Then they looked like not a top 4 team for the next 4 months. And then they actually were a top 4 team at the end of the season. So they actually were, in hindsight, more consistent than I think we think. They had a bad stretch. Haliburton was hurt. They brought in Siakam. There were some growing pains. But like they basically started and ended the same way, as a legit team that could potentially have won a couple games in the conference finals, which is where they kind of ended up at the end of the day.
Well, speaking of starts, I actually want to run through a few high-level things that are different schedule-wise for the Pacers last year and this year. Last year, the spunky to-be conference finalist Pacers played 2 of their first, I have to move my phone to count stuff, 2 of their first 9 games on the road. So 7 of 9 to start the season at home, and they did very well in that stretch to open the season. This year, They play, it looks like 6 of their first 9 on the road. So that's a more difficult start and pretty good opponents mixed in. The other key schedule note I think that people have forgotten about this year, and part of the reason is because the announcement hit really weird. The Pacers play the Spurs in Paris next January. And a lot of people know that because the announcement came out during the playoffs when the Pacers were still playing, so it wasn't like this huge news item. But it's in Paris, and they want to buffer those games for time zone purposes. And so the players can be like not jet lagged. And so they have these gaps of like 3 or 4 days coming into Paris and then out. So they have to condense the schedule out other places. So they have more back-to-backs, only by 1, but so they have more back-to-backs than last year, to 14 this year. And their mileage is up. Usually that's a huge advantage for them. They're in the bottom 2 or 3 of miles traveled because they're in the Midwest and these teams are close. But it turns out a flight to Europe gets you up to 10th in miles traveled. So they still have some advantages because of that. But there are a few differences that aren't going to be major in this analysis, but matter in terms of the whole schedule.
Yeah. I don't know. Have they played other games in Europe? They played preseason game in India.
They played the Nuggets in London in a preseason game a while ago.
Right, and they played the Kings in India, right? A preseason game.
They played the Kings in India, yes.
But has the NBA actually played regular season games in Europe? I know why the Spurs are playing in France. It's obvious.
Last year, the Paris game was Nets-Cavs. Don't ask me why it was Nets-Cavs, but it was Nets-Cavs. And it was only one game. It wasn't 2. So that's another thing that sucks. Like, Wembanyama won't come to Indianapolis this year, right? Like, that's not what we're going to talk about today. But that sucks,
Spurs games.
Yeah. And that also sucks for Pacers fans in San Antonio. But, like, everybody else.
Yeah, and that's an expensive ticket you don't get to sell.
Right. Yeah, but you hope that you pick up some French fans are like, I don't know how much you watch the Olympics, but there was one Team USA game that cuts the crowd and there's just a Myles Turner jersey. I was like, what? That's so random.
Oh, I watched probably the last 3 games pretty thoroughly, but before then I was kind of in and out.
So the back-to-back part didn't get too much impacted by the French trip, but what I do think did is their rest disadvantages. They have 12. Only 2 teams have more than that, and it's Milwaukee and the Clippers. So that's kind of, I think, where you see it, where they play a lot of like a 3rd and 4 or just like every other night, and they have a lot of opponents that don't necessarily have that. But I think we should just get started unless you have any actual notes about this year's Pacers team and their rough prediction of 46-47 from the people who do these things.
Yeah, my only thing to start with is, and I think we disagree. We talked about it for a second. Is I think they're a 50-win team this year around there. I think I think they would have been last year if Siakam played the full season. Now, I guess there's a chance in the East that some combination of the Knicks, Bucks, Sixers play a lot better or healthier, so they win more games. But those teams will have some injuries that will not prevent them from winning 55 games. I don't think Boston probably wins 66 games again, maybe 60, so that should maybe bring a game back to them. And then I don't see like the Heat all of a sudden popping up and winning 55 games, right? So I think they're closer to a 50-win team this year than not. Now, does that mean they win 48? Maybe, or a little bit above 52. But so that's sort of where I'm going to try to nail my record as.
I'm big picture conflicted because running it back with a young team, like, you should be better, right? Even if it's just a little, you should be better, right? So in that line of thinking, like, okay, add a few wins, and you're right, Siakam mid-season, okay. But
they're deeper.
Like you said, Philly's better, Milwaukee probably should be better.
Yeah. With the depth, right?
The Knicks should be better.
Mathurin back. They should be good depth-wise.
Yes, but Mathurin's also back. That matters, right? So, like, there's the other thing is the Pacers, obviously they missed their best player for whatever he missed, 15 games. But otherwise, besides that, we're pretty healthy last year, actually. Myles only barely missed any games. Siakam didn't miss any. Obi didn't miss any. Nembhard, after December, barely missed any. Nesmith only missed like 8 or 9. So maybe you could say that's average luck, but like specifically with some of their best players, they got pretty lucky there. So I think 47-50 is going to be close, but the only way to find out is to actually dive in. And I'm gonna beat you this year. I hate how it wasn't even close. Last year.
If you say so, you could say that. I'm not sure it's going to happen, but I believe in you.
Well, they opened the season with, I think, a very tough start to the year. We're going to run through the first 7 games really quick. It is at Detroit to open the season. Not a particularly tough opponent, but home openers are tough. At New York, that's going to have a ton of juice. Home opener with Philly. And then a back-to-back in Orlando, who had a better regular season record than the Pacers last year. Then they play the champs at home. Then at New Orleans, at Dallas. That is a tough start to the season. How do you kind of foresee that shaking out for this Pacers team?
Real quick, are you going to holler at me when you at the in-season tournament game too? Will you give me that little, or do you know that at all?
You can just pick how many of those games they win. Last year we both just said 1-1 because we didn't know who they'd play. And
well,
then they played the toughest possible teams and won both.
When they play that opponent, just be like, "This is an in-season tournament game, by the way," just so I can know. That might they played incredible. I mean, they've only lost one in-season tournament game ever, right?
Yes,
the entire time. And they arguably, if they had Pascal, they would have won that game because they wouldn't have Buddy Hield missing every shot in third and fourth quarter. I think in that 7-game stretch, I would probably expect 3 wins. I mean, I think there's a lot of tough road games. But also that early in the year, you just don't know what teams are bringing it, right? What teams are sort of coming. Like for me, Dallas feels like a team that is primed to start the season not well after sort of like a improbable run. Like there's not like a ton of momentum for them. I feel like there's less of that just because of the way that sort of series went. I don't know. I'm going to say like win Detroit, lost New York, win Philly, win Orlando, lose Boston, lose New Orleans, win Dallas. If I was to start this off.
Okay. I like where your head's at. I when I glanced at it, I said win Detroit, win Dallas. Also, they swept Dallas last year. Dallas's defense got a lot better down the stretch, but I still feel like there's going to be some holes in it to start the season, like you said. I'll pick a win in New Orleans too because their center's Daniel Tice right now, and then the backup center. We'll see. That could end up changing, and I'll give them the home opener win because it's the home opener. So I actually have them as a rosier start than you, but I understand that could very much go differently given how tough that start is. And remember that Orlando game is a back-to-back, and Orlando had their number all last season, right? Like that is an extremely tough start to the season. But I think after that stretch and really late in November is when it gets easier. When I saw that right away, I thought, man, people are going to be disappointed if they're 3-4, but they shouldn't be. That's a tough start.
Well, and so remember also 2 ESPN games in the first 7. They play ESPN game against the Knicks and against Boston, which I don't know how that affects them, but they didn't play on national TV until the playoffs last year, basically, right? I mean, the play-in tournament, they played the last 2 games on national TV, and then they played the playoffs, but they were basically a no national TV team the rest of the season.
When the schedule came out last year, their only national TV game was the Boston game on TNT on January 30th. But they got the whole in-season tournament quarterfinals, and then they got an NBA TV game added in the middle, and then, of course, in the playoffs. This year they have 14. I should have said that at the start, but NBA TV is 5 of those. They have 9 that you probably have on your cable package this year, and 2 of them come in the first 7 games. And then I think they've got to clean up a little bit here. Their next stretch
right.
I'm giving the cable people some love. Their next stretch after that is Orlando at Charlotte versus Knicks at Orlando, and then twice versus the Heat. First of all, why do they play Orlando 3 times in their first 12 games? That's stupid. Second of all, they need to do well there if they don't start super strong because their opponents are tough. Maybe this is the Pacers like last year that they can beat anybody and lose to anybody, but I think that's going to be my first key stretch of the season. Maybe not the most key stretch, which we identified those last year, but I'll be very curious how that goes. I think they're going to beat Orlando at home, beat Charlotte, lose to New York and Orlando, and then split the Miami games at home because that's how it goes.
I think home win against Charlotte, home win against Orlando, win at Charlotte, win against New York, lose in Orlando, and again split the Miami, like you said.
Ooh, okay.
I think they're going to start off pretty well again. I think there's a high motivation among the team to start the season well. I think there is like this sort of like playoff lingering effect where it wasn't a disappointment, right? It was like wow, we were almost there. Like we were close to thought, well, maybe we're going to, carry that momentum into the start of the season, right? Kind of prove people that this wasn't a mistake kind of feel.
That will be tough and interesting and important because they have expectations for the first time in a while, and that sometimes can be how cracks show in a team is when you're actually expected to win and you're not, right? So if they start 6-5, 6-6, whatever, pick your average-ish start. How do they react to that? Did they point at the schedule or whatever? Because the games we've run through so far are their first 13 games. And after that, here comes some cushion, right? And that's why I think if they get over 500 through their first 13, they're going to hit Thanksgiving or Christmas or pick your major turning event, feeling pretty good about their record because after the spot we're at, it's Toronto, Houston, Milwaukee, who they had their number of last year, Washington, New Orleans, Portland, Detroit at home. Memphis is tough. And then Toronto, Brooklyn, Chicago, Charlotte till December 8th. So their first 13, even if you think those are tough or not tough, whatever. Their next 12 is probably their easiest stretch of the season. And I think it's very important that they do well in that stretch, given what kind of tone they want to set.
Yeah, but this team should be better because they are basically a 20, I think an average of 25, 26 coming back. And so that team should theoretically be better than next year. Plus the full season of
if you're the Pacers,
I mean, with age, right? And you would expect their 24-year-old, now 25-year-old superstar to be better theoretically each year he comes back, for at least until he hits like 27 or 28.
That is true. Some key notes on that stretch. The first Toronto game I mentioned is a back-to-back, and that's why I will temporarily put a loss there. The Washington, New Orleans home games are a back-to-back, and at Toronto, at Brooklyn is a back-to-back, but Brooklyn might be the worst team in the NBA this year. So that might be the easiest possible back-to-back, which is, again, why we actually do this exercise. Because on paper, you'd immediately go, oh, sweet, easy. They can beat both of those teams. And then you really look and you're like, oh, they could actually lose in Brooklyn because it's a back-to-back, and they were okay responding from losses last year, but they stunk on back-to-backs, right? That could actually bode poorly in their favor, poorly for them this year.
I'll go Toronto win, Houston win. I think Milwaukee is going to be really motivated to kick the Pacers' butt in one of these games. I think a Milwaukee win there.
Oh, you told me in-season tournament game for that Bucks game, and the other one that I missed one also. The first Heat game is also an in-season tournament game.
Oh, so maybe
you had a win already for that one.
I think they might lose to the Bucks. I think the Bucks are going to be motivated next year to beat the Pacers, right? I mean, I think the Pacers basically won 9 out of 11 games they played. I mean, that's after 3 years of winning none of those games, except when maybe Giannis didn't play. They won a Bucks game here or there. So I'll go Milwaukee win in that one. I will go Washington win, New Orleans loss. I just don't think they're going to win a back-to-back. And then Wednesday of Thanksgiving week, they beat Portland. Are we going through? How far did you go? All the way to December 8th?
I went all the way to Charlotte on December 8th.
Okay. I will pick Portland win, Detroit win.
Detroit is an in-season tournament game.
Yeah, definitely going to be. I think they're going to beat Detroit all 4 times this year. Detroit's not very good still. I don't even know how Detroit would be any better. I think actually last year I went to the Detroit Thanksgiving week game. They had one, and I remember seeing Cade Cunningham and thinking, oh, that's right. That's right. That's who they have. I forgot they picked this guy first over. Like, he was good-ish, I think. But I was like, oh yeah, Detroit has like they have all these number 1 picks or top, 2 or 3 picks that are just like, okay. They're fine. I will pick a loss in Memphis, win in Toronto, win in Brooklyn, loss in Chicago, win against Charlotte. And where does that put me at record-wise at the moment?
You currently have the Pacers at 16-9 through that point of the season. I have them 15-10. In that stretch we just did, my losses were at Toronto to start because it's a back-to-back, at Milwaukee because I agree with you, at Memphis because Memphis is going to be good, and at Brooklyn because it's the middle of a back-to-back for a 3 in 4 nights. But that if they come out of that with, I'll make up a number, 13 wins, they might not feel very good. They'd be like 1 game over 500, and then things are about to get harder. And important to note, this is a good cutoff point, that is when the in-season tournament stuff will happen. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with activities, kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it is easy to let your priorities slip. Even when you know what makes you happy, it's hard to make the time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. Therapy can be helpful for so many reasons, like learning positive coping skills and setting boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It is not just for people who have experienced major trauma. And so if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. They play scheduled 8th against Charlotte, and then at Phoenix on the 19th. They actually come out of the in-season tournament with a road trip, which is a bummer for them. But the coming out of that stretch, there's 11 days in between. They will play at least 2 games in there. Opponents TBD, depending on in-season tournament performance. If they make the finals again, they'll play 3 games in there. So that's why
it could not be a bummer if they don't make the in-season tournament final thing, because then they might be able to get out west a little earlier to get a little bit more rest, like a little more acclimated, instead of just like, having to play on a Tuesday and jumping out on a Sunday to go play. Or I guess they're playing Phoenix on a Thursday, right? So like it might give them a little bit of a break. Although, is the in-season tournament finals on a Saturday? still, right? I mean, that's what it was last year.
No, it's different now. I can't remember if it's Monday or Tuesday because they're not competing with football anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It actually was pretty good on that Saturday night. I actually I
loved it. It was very fun.
Like you played that right. You did that. They don't want to do the Thursday night against football on Thursday night.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay,
exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
They're
anyways, I kind of enjoyed. I enjoyed both the Thursday games, and I mean they won, so it helped, right? It was quite enjoyable. Yeah.
Let me tell you the other reason, by the way,
we'll see what happens.
That in-season tournament stretch matters so much because they come out with at Phoenix, at Sacramento, at Golden State versus Thunder, at Boston twice versus Milwaukee, at Miami versus Phoenix. That might be their toughest 9-game stretch of the season. So getting some sort of cushion before that's going to matter.
Do we think Phoenix is actually going to be good next year? Just an overall question. With Phoenix, is Phoenix going to be good? I'm not sure they're going to be that good.
Yes, I'm pretty confident they'll be good.
You don't think Durant sounds like he's just miserable? Sorry for cussing there. He's just miserable. Like he sounds miserable. Doesn't he sound miserable? Like the whole USA, like he was talking like he was just miserable being in Phoenix. Like he was like so happy to be playing on like a team with great players.
I believe in Mike Budenholzer making that team better. Yes.
Okay, I mean that's fair. I mean they should be good. Durant might also be on the other side of it finally.
I'm gonna go here. I should add at Sacramento, at Golden State, back-to-back versus OKC at Boston, back-to-back. That at Boston game might be the most obvious loss of the entire schedule on the whole season. So I think my wins for that stretch, that at Sacramento game is always going to be a thing. For Haliburton, it's hard to lose, it's hard for a team to sweep a team in a city, and the Pacers are going to be really juiced up to play the Celtics. So my wins in this stretch are going to be at Sacramento, at Boston, and home versus Phoenix. But I will give all the rest losses through January 4th.
What at Boston game, though?
I think they win the second one.
Okay. I think Phoenix they beat. I think Golden State they beat. I think Golden State also not going to be that good this year.
You're a hater.
I don't think Phoenix and Golden State, I think they're kind of at the point where, Durant and Curry got their, big moment in the Olympics. They're kind of like crowning achievement award for, carrying that team and not letting Tatum do anything for the whole Olympics. And I think they're both very good players, but I'm not sure they're not the 5 years ago Durant and Curry who are unstoppable, who can carry teams to unheard of levels. I think they win the first one against Boston. What Boston game do you think they blow in the stupidest way possible? Right? That's the key to Boston, right? They find a way to lose, and just it's been this way since we've been doing this podcast, right? With Bojan throwing the ball backwards in that game where they lost in 2018 or 19, they should have won at home against Boston. I mean, it's just they have just. I mean, maybe Carlisle knows it in the last 10 seconds. He'll be like, I'm calling every timeout. I'm making sure everything's advanced. I'm doing everything to make sure we don't do stupid stuff. But I think they win the first Boston one. I'll just pick the other one of you just to do that. And you went through all the way. I think they will beat Milwaukee and beat Phoenix again.
Okay.
I think they're going to sweep Phoenix. I think Phoenix is bad. I think Phoenix not bad. Bad in their way. I don't think it's very good. I think they're a very just going to be average team this year.
That stretch is going to be fascinating for our final standings against each other because we have a lot of different games. That could be the game. If they're playing well, then the Fever are going. I'm at Gamebridge and the Fever are going crazy, so I can hear lots of shaking. That stretch will probably define who actually wins the contest this year. Another reason that stretch is important. This is a theme of their schedule to me, by the way. They go from hard gap, easy gap, hard gap, easy gap. Guess what? Guess what happens after that stretch? They play a bunch of crap teams again. I don't get how their schedule shook out this way. And really everything after New Year's is a lot simpler. Their next stretch that after what we just talked about is at Brooklyn versus Chicago versus Golden State, 2 against Cleveland, at Detroit, and then Philly before they go to Paris. I mean, it's so weird that all the bad teams are kind of clumped together and all the good teams are clumped together. When the Pacers are clicking and playing good and not, this year's going to matter so much. It's very strange.
I think you're underrating Cleveland.
I think Cleveland's pretty good. That's true.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were overrating Cleveland. Well, underrating. Whatever one you thought about, I thought you were saying Cleveland wasn't good. I think Cleveland is pretty good. I don't know. I'm not saying correct. Whatever I'm saying is wrong, but I think Cleveland's decent. So that stretch is not that easy. I mean, Philly should be good as long as he stays healthy. You don't think Philly's going to be good?
I think Philly's going to be good. I just think that stretch is pretty easy. I think they're only going to lose in Cleveland during that stretch.
Oh, okay. I think they'll probably lose. Let me just do this. I'll do the stretch. I think they win against Brooklyn. I think they lose that Chicago one because they're going to lose one to Chicago as they always do. I think they win against Golden State, win at home against Cleveland, at Detroit, and lose Philly at home.
Okay.
I just think Philly is good, and they usually actually play them pretty well. And like, there's not like some advantage they have against Philly at home, and the same thing going to Philadelphia, right? I feel like every year it's usually a split of the series, and it's like each team wins one on each court, and a lot of it is schedule based and who's back to back and who's playing, right? Because like Embiid may not play, or maybe this is a game where Haliburton doesn't play or whatever. Like that will swing it a little bit, but I can't quite factor that into this.
You know what's exciting, Adam?
What?
At this point of the season, they're about to go to Paris, and it's the perfect halfway point cutoff. So it's very easy to assess what we think of the Pacers so far. How many wins do you think you have? Have you been tracking it?
No, I assume I'm in the 20s, though. Probably 23, 24.
You have 25 at the halfway point, and I have 24, which actually is interesting to me that I'm ahead.
Well, I said they win 50 games, so 25 in the middle makes it right down.
But their end of season schedule is easier per my going through this already. So maybe I'm going to end up higher than I thought. We'll see.
Well, also in that March range, you never know. There's a couple teams who are really tanking you didn't expect, and all of a sudden, if you draw them the right moment, right? Like, they haven't played the Hawks yet, right? And the Hawks could be really hard.
We have not said the Hawks yet. Very astute to
right? Yes, they could be tanks. That could be all of a sudden 4 games you can win. That maybe last year they only won 3 of them.
We also haven't said the Jazz yet.
Oh, well, are they tanking because they just re-signed Marketing?
Have you seen the rest of their 14 players?
No, I know. I was just so confused at why they re-signed Marketing. Like, I don't understand. His salary would have been a great trade piece to literally any team because at $18 million, that's such a tradable piece versus like his now salary of 40 something or 50 is just harder to trade in the future. Anyways,
what do you consider Pacers Spurs in Paris? A home game or an away game?
An away game because I assume everybody's going to be a Spurs fan because they're all French. But there is a chance that kind of game draws literally all of not just French basketball fans, but English. It's not that hard to get over from London, right? Like it could be. Yeah, like what you see with these NFL games over in Europe a lot is like there's kind of like a fans based on the players, right? Like I think the Chiefs played there a couple years ago, and there's a little more Chiefs fan, but ultimately what you end up seeing is just like a ton of it's kind of more of an event, right? It's like we don't get that many of these games in Europe. It's like kind of when the Premier League teams come here, right? Like when I think one of them played in South Carolina recently. It's like there was some fans, but mainly it was just EPL fans, people wanting to come watch the best players. So it'll be a little bit Spurs heavy crowd, but I think it really just be like wanting a good basketball game crowd probably.
Yeah, my favorite Premier League team was not one of these two teams, but when Chelsea played Inter Milan and Indy when I was in high school, I was like, yep, I'm going. Like I want to see these guys while they're here, right? So there is some level of that to it. I only bring that up to say they play the Spurs twice in a row, January 25th and January 23rd. Those are not home games or road games, but I probably am going to pick the Spurs in both of those because it's going to feel more like a French crowd. Spurs already beat the Pacers once last year. I'm just not – I'm pretty bullish on the Spurs this year. So, unfortunately for the Pacers, I'm going 2 losses there.
I'm going to go a split. They'll probably win the second one. I just think with the time zone change of both teams, there's going to be a lot of – it's going to be hard to win 2 games in a row. I just think, right, you're going to have to travel – Spurs are one more time than over, but they're basically both traveling with 5 or 6 time zones ish across, right? It's 5 or 6 hour difference depending on where you're at. Yep. And that's just gonna be. I mean, I know they travel in private jets and they probably have all this stuff for jet lag, right? They probably have like this top tier sports medicine for it, but it's still just tough to travel that much and just hard.
Can I give you? Here we go. They come back from Paris. What I'm calling important stretch number 2. For their season will define how strong their record is when the season is over. They get back from Paris before the All-Star break with Detroit, Atlanta, Utah, Clippers, Lakers, Knicks, who are good, and Wizards. On one hand, some easy opponents. On the other hand, that stretch features 2 back-to-backs, including a Utah-Portland back-to-back. But the opponent quality is pretty easy. If they win the games that it looks like they should in that stretch, and they come into it with 4 days off beforehand, although they're traveling back from Europe, I think they're going to do really well in that stretch. I think they're only going to lose to the Lakers and the Knicks, and I think they're going to enter the break looking pretty good. And that's also important because that's right around the trade deadline.
The new Clippers logo is terrible. I'm just seeing it for the first time. I guess I know they changed uniforms. I remember there being a press release about it, but man, it looks terrible. Now that I see it on ESPN at the moment.
It's not great.
I like the old LAC kind of thing. I think the problem with this stretch is that it's it's hard to play 4 West Coast games in a week basically and not lose 2 of them at minimum, just because it's like that's a brutal type of traveling. That's just mean, right? Where it send you one direction and then send you back the other direction. Like, you're better off like sending them to like Japan to play games than coming back to the West Coast on the way back. Like, that would be at least a little bit better to them. I mean, I think they beat Detroit and Atlanta because both those teams are terrible in their home games, and you shouldn't lose those games. Although Detroit could be one of those games where they come back jet lagged and just really overlook it. But I won't pick that. Utah's slight elevation, right? That's part of it.
Yep.
That's why it's always a tough road. I think they lose at Utah, win at Portland. Are they going to win both LA games in that schedule where they're all going out on that Friday night and just hungover as hell one of the nights? I think they beat Clippers, lose to Lakers. I think it's okay. That is like a brutal. At least they're not going to Denver in that stretch because it's really, really hard to go to Denver, Utah, and then LA back to back. That's like altitude.
The first year in forever, they don't have the Denver, Utah road back to back. That's just killed
with
them.
Sacramento thrown in there too. Usually,
yes, they always have that, and it's always so hard.
It's brutal. It's hard to play that elevation, I assume, and especially when the teams are good too. I'm like with Denver, right? Denver's quite good. Denver's probably the favorite this year to win, I would say. Maybe Boston, probably Boston, then Denver.
Give me New York and Washington so we can get to the break.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it went that far. I think they beat New York and beat Washington.
Everybody, we have to very quickly talk about Game Time, the best way to get tickets to events near you. And they have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you do flip through those thousands of tickets, though, they have, first of all, 50% off Labor Day for Diamondbacks Dodgers games. And second of all, if you flip through those, you'll find tons of great seats to tons of things you want to go to, including, for me, Liberty versus Dallas Wings last year. Hop on the app, saw exactly what my seat view was going to be when I got there. It was spot on. Knew I was getting the lowest price because of their game time guarantee, which was awesome. I could turn off hidden fees so I could see the total price before I got to the end. The all-in pricing was awesome and exactly right. They have a flexible customer service policy. It is everything you should want in a ticket purchasing app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets and concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account and use the code LOCKDOWNNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All-Star break, 30 wins for me, 32 for you. This would be a very pretty Pacer season if it goes this way.
So I'm like 32 and 19 or 32 and 20?
Yes, 32 and 19.
So that should put them in
Phenomenal.
the top 3 in the East, right, at that point?
Doing this is making me feel like I might be higher on the team than I thought. Because I thought in my – go ahead.
No, but if you put them – so it would be the top 3 in the East. They might have 2 All-Stars if they're that good.
That is possible, yes.
Right? I mean, Haliburton's probably an All-Star for sure. And then the question is, can Siakam – Turner's never been an All-Star. So can Siakam be the one to sneak in?
He's the guy. I mean, maybe someone else, Mathurin, Nemhard, someone else reaches that level. But, I mean, if they're this good, they probably will. That's quite the thing. They come out with 4 at home. I think that's pretty nice also for their schedule, even though 2 of those are a back-to-back against good teams. So, again, they have a lot of nice schedule chunks. They have a pretty easy one coming up after this. But let's do their first 5 coming out of the break. Memphis, LA Clippers, Nuggets, Raptors, then at Miami for their first 5. I think they will beat the Clippers, Raptors, and Heat in that stretch.
I think they will probably beat the Grizzlies and just the Raptors and go 2 and 3. I just think, I don't know. I can't. The Clippers, I just don't have a feel for because I just don't like. If Kawhi plays like 10 games, they don't have anyone else. I mean, it's James Harden, but I think they'll lose to the Clippers, and I think they'll definitely lose to the Nuggets. So we'll just go those.
Yeah, Jokic has always had their number, and if their defense isn't any better, they're still going to struggle against the same guys. So I got to go with them. All right, potential key stretch number 3 after that Chicago game we both just mentioned versus Houston, at Atlanta twice in a row, at Chicago, and then they play a very tough 4. So doing well in that Houston, Atlanta, Chicago run is going to be important. I also should have added it, by the way, Clippers Nuggets at home is a back-to-back. No back-to-backs in that stretch. I think they're going to go 4-0, and it's going to set them up to run down the season chasing the seed they hope to have in the top whatever, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or whatever they are.
So you're going from Houston to Chicago in the 10th? That's the
all 4 wins. No back-to-backs, easier opponents. They can take care of that.
I'm going to go one more. I'm going to say they win all the next 5, and I do think they win that back-to-back against Milwaukee.
Wow. Yes, coming out of that, they do go into Milwaukee, or excuse me, come home to Milwaukee for a back-to-back. It's from Chicago. It's the easiest possible travel for a back-to-back.
Is that even really traveling? It's like a 45-minute plane flight when especially you have that kind of private plan.
The thing is, after that stretch starts, Milwaukee at Philly, at Milwaukee, at Minnesota versus Dallas, with a back-to-back for at Philly, at Milwaukee, and then they come out with home versus Dallas to end that trip, and then it's a back-to-back with the Nets. So I think that is going to be a tough stretch where they only win the Philly road game because the schedule's tough there. And Minnesota is another team that the size like Orlando last year just had their number, kicked their butt.
I'm going to be honest. I think they lose the next 4. Philly, Milwaukee, Minnesota, and Dallas, and they have a really rough little stretch, and they kind of have to regroup themselves.
And then we have to do the emergency podcast about, oh man, they're 6th. Oh, the play-ins right there. They've got to clean it up down the stretch.
They'll be 6th because there'll be 5 teams a game and a half apart, like there was for I don't know, 2/3 of the season last year. It was like the conference was so the trying to figure out who was going to end up where was the most insane thing the last 3 weeks. Everyone was like half a game apart. And you lose one game and another team win, all of a sudden you go from being the 2 seed to the 7 seed.
I'm being very intentional of where my cutoffs are for this exercise because their last 14 games, we're not going to do all 14 at once, but this I think is going to be a key thing for the Pacers this year. They have it's not easy. There are actually hard opponents in here, but they only have, I believe, 1 back-to-back left. Oh, excuse me. They have 2 back-to-backs left at this point in the season, but only one of them actually includes travel in between the games. They have a much heavier home schedule. Only 5 of their last 14 on the road. 4 of their last 14 on the road. I can't count right now. And it's not that hard of opponents. I'm going to read them all. We'll break them up for our predictions. This is their last 14
games. Tell me what record I have currently. What I have the team at?
39 wins, I believe, is what you have. Yes, 39-27. Okay. With 14 to go. They close with Brooklyn, Minnesota, Lakers at home, then at Wizards, at OKC. That's very tough, of course. Home Kings, home Hornets, home Jazz. And there's a chance that of these teams I've already said 5 games against teams that are just going to be praying to lose. At Denver, that will be hard. And that's the most random game. They play 3 home games, then go to Denver, then play 3 more home games. And then home Wizards, home Cavs, home Magic, at Cavs. So those last 3 games are going to be interesting because there's going to be probably some seeding implications with the Cavs or the Magic. But in general, their last 14 games are super favorable, which is unique because usually they have like March Madness sending them on the road or Indiana High School State Championship sending on the road. So the fact that they can close this way, I think is going to mean a lot and set them up to close well if they can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a stretch and I see maybe 4 losses, maybe 5, but not much more than that. No, I think they'll do great. Yeah, I think they win both Brooklyn games, probably lose to Minnesota and beat the Lakers. I'm sorry.
I just typed the same thing down for my predictions for those 4 games. Agreed. The trouble will be, can they go back-to-back on the road and beat Washington? Because OKC right after that, I think they're going to lose to the Thunder. I think the Thunder are going to be the best regular season team in the NBA this year. Not postseason, but regular season team in the NBA this year. So I think they got to win that Wizards game, and I will give it to them because the Wizards are going to want to lose by that point in the season.
Yeah, I think they beat the Wizards. I think they actually beat Oklahoma City too. I wonder if Oklahoma City will have that point. I've been almost clinched the top seed. Like I agree with you, they might win like 60-something games. And didn't the top second, like last year, the West was all 51, 52 games, right? For the top like 3-4 teams, they were all pretty low 50s. So if they win like 60 games by mid to late March, they'll have stood up. I don't think anybody else is going to get that close to that. I don't think we're going to have like 360 win teams in the West. That would be
the West is going to be pretty nuts.
I think Denver doesn't care about seeding. Minnesota might a little bit, but really probably not. Dallas does not care. Really, the only team that probably cares about seeding is Oklahoma City because they're the younger team that wants the advantage. Otherwise, Minnesota went into Denver on a game 7 and won a game. So what do they give it? Care? They don't care about it.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating. Playoffs are gonna define it. I'm gonna give them a home win over the Kings, a team that they'll have some juice against, and then We're in April. What do you think for that Kings game? And then we can close out the last 7 here.
So right now I have them. I guess if they beat the Kings, Kings will be a 4-game win streak. I have that for sure. And then you want to move on to the last 7?
Run them out. Run it out.
All right. Sacramento, I said win. Charlotte will be a win. Utah will be a win. Denver will be a loss. Wizards win. Cleveland loss. Orlando loss. Cleveland win.
Okay. Wow. At the flipping of the Cavs games compared to what I'm going to do is fascinating. I think they're going to beat beat Cleveland at home and lose their last 2 games. But I think they're going to win every other game but the Denver game in that stretch like you did. So that leaves you with a final record of, do you know it?
49 wins, right?
49 wins. Yeah. But let me keep it clear here.
Oh, there's a game missing. There's a game missing. There's
2 games missing.
Oh, there's 2. You're right. There's 2 games.
The in-season tournament games are not on there. So through the 8 scheduled games, Adam has the Pacers at 49-31, and I have the Pacers at 47-33. So I apparently am taking the over because it's just so easy for me to go, they'll go 1-1 in those 2 games we don't know about. That's what
I feel better now. I was like, how am I not getting the 50? Because there's 2 games.
You did get to 50. You just
I thought they might win 51 games, honestly. So that makes sense. They could win those 2 plays.
And the thing is, if they are playing harder teams for those 2 games, that means they played well in group play, right? And maybe have more wins than we thought. So it's very easy to kind of put all that together and put together a record. I'm happy with this. I think my biggest takeaway from this, and I had already run through before you hadn't, is, and I said this already while recording, is how much their schedule goes from hard stretch to easy stretch to hard stretch to easy stretch with it doesn't feel like it ping pongs around in quality a lot. It feels like they have a lot of swaths of easy and hard. That will be important.
Yeah, and I think the team's gonna be pretty good, barring a couple bad injuries, but they are pretty deep, right? They were playing 9 guys in the playoffs last year? 8 guys, right? They were playing 8 or 9 guys in the playoffs. They add back a guy, right? They're adding back a guy who they for sure will play in the rotation, right? With Mathurin, right? That's the 9th one.
Yep.
Yeah, and they've got. I mean, I don't know if Washington will be that good. But I just think they have some depth here. They have an ability, I think, to sustain an injury to Haliburton better than they had last year, just because they've got enough, a little bit more talent around them. And so, yeah, I think they've got a decent shot to sort of because that's how you win. Either you win 50 games because everyone's healthy the entire season, or you have this ability of guys to step up when they get hurt, right? That was sort of the Spurs model for a while. It was like they just had guys who could win lots of games when it didn't, even when they felt like they shouldn't.
It'll be fascinating to see if they can even out their inconsistency, right, and get back on track from the beat all the good teams, lose to all the bad teams model they ran through last year too. Yeah. Even if that's just more normal, that would help me feel better about the quality of team they truly are. But last year, we were both much over when it came to their win-loss total compared to expectation. This year, I'm just barely over it, and you're about the same amount over it. We're just the optimists here, apparently. So I can't wait for it to start.
Do you think they're a top 4 team?
No.
Do you think they're a playoff team before a play-in?
Last year, the 4th seed was 49, and I currently have them at 49. So maybe, I guess, they're going to be right in that mix, but I think they're going to be in that 4 through 6 range, probably.
Okay, so they could be the 4 seed.
Yeah, it's very possible. Yeah. But it's interesting in the East because I've said this, and I want to do a whole show on this, but I think the top 8 in the East is better, but 9 through 15 is probably worse a little bit on average. So it'll be easier to pick up some easy wins, but maybe a little tougher to do that. So making the playoffs is easier, but avoiding the play-ins harder. We'll see. But I think I feel good about this. I feel good about this win total number.
Yeah, I just think in the East, there's not this year any team that's going to be surprising the top, right? It's all the teams that were the top 8 last year are going to be moving around potentially within the top 8, but there's no like Orlando was last year, Cleveland was 2 years ago, right? Teams are like, oh, this team was all of a sudden the 4th worst team. Now they're the 5th best team in the East, right? I don't think there's going to be any of that change, so that helps make it a little bit easier this year at least. Agreed. Looking forward to actually seeing it play out as we do. We got to predict preseason games. It's like a tiebreaker one year, but I had the same every preseason. Whether it's football, baseball, basketball, you couldn't pay me to care about preseason games, and they used to pay me to care, and I did a little bit, but now I don't get paid. I'm not get paid to care. I literally don't care. Like what they are. I don't know why they do preseason games. I just don't understand the point of it, to be honest, except just to sell some tickets.
They're very boring. They're not my favorite thing.
They're like all these football ones going on. Like I was at a bar the other day and I saw one and I'm like, oh, wait, I don't care. It's preseason game. Who cares about that? Right? I just couldn't care. But you're paid
Agreed.
to care. So you might.
Adam, thank you very much for the time. I hope I don't hope. I'm going to beat you this year for the first time, I think, in 3 years on this, which is concerning. Even the year they won 25 games, you beat me, Mr. Optimist man.
That was such a bad year.
Not fair. That was not a fun season.
Yeah, the Mathurin year.
Fun season. Adam is on Twitter at Friedman5, but that would be more of a feed if you're interested in Tennessee politics as opposed to the Indiana Pacers. They'll sneak in there every so often.
Yeah.
Not as much anymore. I'm on there at Tony R. East, and this podcast is there at Locked On Pacers. Tomorrow, we're talking about the best seasons by a shooting guard in Pacers history. Probably Reggie at 1, but which season? Does he have all of the top 5? Where's Oladipo? Who else?
Granger, right?
Granger might be in there. Yes,
That 07, 08 season, whenever he averaged 26 points a game. That's the most anyone's ever averaged for a Pacers player.
Turns out being an all-star on the Pacers is probably pretty close to the top 5 seasons out of position.
Pretty sure Granger's averaged the most points in a season of any Pacer ever.
You would
26.8 or whatever that was.
You would be correct. And then Wednesday, player interview number 2. It's scheduled. I haven't done it yet, so I'm not going to say who it is until it's done. So looking forward to that. Thank you all for tuning in today. Let us know whose schedule predictions you like more. I should post them somewhere. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.